Thanks very much for coming along. It's lovely to meet you all in this virtual space. My name is John. I'm with my colleagues Paul and Greg. We all work at the Lifelong Learning Centre, and we're just going to run through an introduction really to student finance.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name's Paul. I'm a student support officer at the University of Leeds, and predominantly I'm supporting mature students, adults, and I've been doing that for about the last 9 years. Invariably, I tend to get asked at least 20 questions a day about money and finance and student finance, because it's important for adults, perhaps in a way. More important than for an 18-year-old who is maybe having that rite of passage and living away from home for the first time, and maybe the first time having disposable income or having the budget. Coming to university a little bit later in life, it is different, and there's bigger considerations. It isn't just coming along for a jolly. I mean, university's great and it's fun and all of that, but there is big considerations when you've got kids or a mortgage or on benefits, or have to kind of manage work, or have disabilities or medical conditions. You have to think about finance in a different way. So, but by generally supporting students, I just get asked a lot of student finance questions. So as John's delivering this presentation and giving quite a general overview that will be useful to everyone in this space, I might chip in as we go if I've got something that I want to say, but equally, I'm just going to lurk in the chat. So as John's talking, if there's something where you think, that's interesting, and how would that relate to me? Or if you've just got any general questions or just want to unpick anything a little bit more as we're going, stick it in the chat and I'll answer in the chat. As I say, I'll chip in occasionally, but yeah, you'll find me in the chat. And please ask as many questions as you want. I like being tested about student finance. So yeah, please don't be shy in the chat.
Thanks, Paul. And just before we properly begin, just a couple of bits of housekeeping, I guess. You can ask questions throughout the session. You're welcome to ask it via the chat function, or you can switch your mic on at the end as well and ask us any questions that you have. The chat function, I believe, is the bottom right-hand side of your screen. If you have any technical problems as well, if you have any issues, do let us know. We can see if there's anything that we can resolve that for you. But a lot of the times it's just a case of if logging out of Zoom and logging back in can remedy a lot of those problems. And also, just one thing to mention, just for our kind of, I guess, just for our records, and so we can send you the right information after. If you have joined the event, if you are able just to use the name that you used to sign up for the event, it helps us just kind of be able to send you the information so we know you've attended, that's all. And as I mentioned, it is recorded, so there'll be a recording after. So thanks very much for coming along to this introduction to student finance. You can see my email and Paul's email on the screen now, and we'll also make that available in the chat, but you're really welcome to contact us after as well. You know, we're aware that not every things may come up in the future about student finance. You might have questions that crop up, or it might be something quite personal to yourself that you think about and that you'd like us to kind of look into for you. So feel free to contact us after this. It's not a one-stop shop. It's not just we're providing this information and that's it. We're here to support you with regards to your student finance, your applications, any other questions that you have. So feel free to contact us after this event with the emails that you can see there. And ask as many questions as Paul said that you want as well. So, so as many questions as you want. Paul will keep an eye on the chat and he'll shout out any questions that he thinks would be a good idea to answer, out loud and verbally, so we can go through that. But this really is just an opportunity for you guys to find out what's important to you about student finance. And there can be a lot of questions that people have, so hopefully we'll cover a lot of things. And, you guys might have very different knowledge about student finance. Some of you, it might be the first time thinking about it. For some of you, you might already have a bit of experience with regards to it. So hopefully there'll still be something to take away today. I was wondering as well, as I begin the session, if you could let us know in the chat what courses you're interested in applying for, and also whether that would be a part-time or a full-time course. Is that okay for you to do that? And Paul, maybe you can just kind of give us an idea of the courses people are looking to apply for as we go along.
Yeah, sure.
Sound okay? Brilliant.
And it's fine to have no idea as well.
Yeah.
I know people in this space will have a very clear idea of what they want to do and how they want to do it. People might just be at the very early stages thinking, I don't know, but I'm just here to find out a little bit more, which is absolutely fine.
Totally. Yeah, it's a really good point. You know, wherever you're at, you know, just let us know. It just helps us kind of to, you know, to talk about the things which are relevant to you guys as well. So I guess to start off the kind of the session, really, we've kind of brought it down into 4 different areas about things that we think you need to know about student finance. So what is it going to cost you? How are you going to pay for it? How much are you going to get? And then finally, where to start. So to begin at the end, where to start, it's probably worth me saying that firstly, for full-time applications, student finance isn't open yet, and it usually opens about kind of March time for applications. So you can't apply at the moment if you were starting university in September 2022. And that's the same if you were applying for a part-time course as well. That generally opens for student finance applications in the summertime. But the main thing to know and the main thing to take away, if you take away nothing else from the session, is that you do not need a place at university to apply for student finance. So you don't have to have even submitted an application for a course. You can still, you know, and you would still be able to apply for student finance. All you do is you put down the course you hope to study and the uni you hope to go to. And if things change, you just update your application with those changes. And if you don't go to university, you don't get the money. It doesn't negatively affect any future applications. But the worst thing to do is to leave it quite late, and then, you know, you're struggling to get everything together and have everything in place for your studies when you start in September or whenever it is. So apply as soon as it opens, and you can change any details on there if you change your mind about what course you want to do or what, you know, university you want to go to. Apply it as early as possible, I would say. Yeah, it's really important. So if you take away nothing else, make sure you apply as early as possible. So the first thing is, how much is it going to cost you to go to uni, I guess? Well, there's a load of different things here of different areas and different, you know, different costs associated with going to university. I'm not necessarily saying every single one is going to be applicable or relevant to you, but it's a good idea to kind of have some idea, you know, some kind of understanding of where those costs may come from. And we're going to cover support and funding that you can get basically to cover anything on here in the further slides. So the first thing is your tuition fees. So if you've had a look about different courses available at university and you've had a look on course information pages, you will have probably seen that course fees per year. And it can vary. So if you're doing a part-time course, per year it'll be less than, for example, a full-time course. But the main thing to take away about this and the main thing to know is that as long as you're eligible, you will be able to get a tuition fee loan which will cover the course fees for the duration of your studies. And nobody is expecting you to turn up at university and pay anything up front yourself. You're not expected to have the cash up front to go and pay for university. You'll be able to get that tuition fee loan, which goes directly from Student Finance England to the university you're going to be studying at. And the second thing is, you're not expected to sort that payment out yourself. So it's not going to go into your bank account. You don't have to sort out a payment plan or anything like that. It's really straightforward. And as long as you're eligible, you'll get your tuition fee loan, which will be paid directly to the university. And we'll talk about that a bit more in the next slide. And the next thing is study costs as well, which are going to vary from course to course and from person to person, to be frank. I mean, for example, the course that you study could have additional costs. So for example, if you are going to do a healthcare course like a nursing or midwifery degree, you may go to a lot of placements, a lot of different hospitals and healthcare centres in the region. Obviously, if you're travelling to and from those, that could be an additional cost that you may incur just for travel. But alternatively, there could be additional materials that you might want to buy, or there could be field trips you'll be going on, perhaps for a scientific degree or one around geography or something like that. And also, it's going to depend on you as a person as well, whether you are the type of person who's going to be borrowing books from the library, or if you want a physical copy at home. if you want to get a laptop or a tablet to help you with your studies and note taking and essay writing, for example. Obviously, if you want to buy a laptop or buy books and extra equipment, that has a cost to it. And also, if you have kids, and you're going to have to make childcare arrangements now, because when you'd usually be looking after them, you're going to be on in a seminar or a lecture. And if you have a disability, and you feel there could be additional support that needs to be put in place while you're on your course. Now, for the last two, there's specific support that you can actually get, which will cover these things from Student Finance England, and we'll speak about that in a minute. And the final thing is, money to live on while you're studying. You're all adults, and you've taken, the time to come here today to find out about this, and you'll be well aware that obviously life carries on while you're studying, and bills still need to be paid, like rent and mortgage, running a car, getting to and from university, for example, whether that be on a bus or a train. The reason we mention this is just because these things aren't factored in to decide how much you can get in your student loan. So you need to make sure that your lifestyle fits the money that you can get from Student Finance England and other avenues. It's just important to realise that. Paul, I don't know if there's anything you want to add with regards to that.
Just to echo that, really, one of the questions that I always get asked in those first few weeks of people starting university, they'll find out that I know a bit about student finance and book in to see me, and then say, right, now that I've started university, I'm getting the train every day from Huddersfield. I just need to apply for that, some travel costs. I need help with my travel costs. So if you can just send me a link to like the travel bursary. And their faces quite quickly drop when I tell them that there isn't one. They chose to travel from Huddersfield to Leeds, or from Leeds to Bradford, or wherever it is, and absolutely reinforcing that. I think student finance is affordable. We don't have gone on the days maybe of the cliched students just eating beans, and I'm not suggesting that you're going to be popping champagne corks every evening and stuff. It's absolutely manageable, but that idea that your lifestyle does have to fit the university that you choose, and you have to make careful decisions. I think John later on in this presentation will talk about potentially other pots of money that might help you make a decision on which university you might choose over the other. But yeah, just doing some careful kind of figuring out, particularly around travel, and those other maybe hidden costs, because when you arrive at university, yeah, you need to make that money fit.
Yeah, no, Paul's exactly right. And these things are just to make you aware of the different costs which are associated with going to university. But as Paul added, we'll talk about, what you can get from Student Finance England in the next slides, but also additional support and additional pots of money, which you could definitely use for travel, for example, or for other things, or for buying a laptop or whatever it is. They might not be called a travel bursary, but there's certainly additional financial support depending on what you study and where you study that you could use for all these things. Paul, I just wondered, because I can't see the chat, unfortunately, if we've had anybody let us know what courses they're studying or wanting to study, sorry.
Yeah, a good mix of different courses. So we've definitely got a mix of people doing full-time and part-time. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the differences there, because there are differences.
Yeah.
Not huge differences, but just stuff to note. Some things that part-time students aren't eligible for. A mix of courses, but we've definitely got people doing healthcare related courses like midwifery, and a couple of midwives actually, biomedical science, adult nursing. So again, we'll talk in this session, I think, about maybe some extra pots if you are studying an NHS course. I think they call it something else now, like allied health profession courses. There's pots of money for you kind of NHS courses as well. So we'll touch on that as well. Nice.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so the next thing is, how are you going to pay for it? Now, unless you've got quite a lot of money, that you dispose of even, you're probably going to get a loan from the government. A high percentage, 75, 80%, I think it is, something like that, people who are studying get a loan from Student Finance England for their tuition fee and then maintenance loan, their living costs. So the tuition fee loan is not means tested. So when I'm referring to what I'm referring to here with regards to means tested is whether your household income is taken into consideration to decide how much you're eligible for. And we'll go into it in a bit of detail later on about what that actually is referring to and who is classed as your household and how student finance team will make that decision a bit later on. But for this purpose, I'm just going to say it's means tested or not means tested or partially means tested. So it's not means tested for your tuition fee loan. So as long as you're eligible, you'll get the full amount for the duration of your studies. So that course fees will be paid directly to the university you're studying at every year for the duration of your studies by Student Finance England. And the next one is your living costs loan. You'll probably, more regularly see it being called a maintenance loan. And this is partially means tested. So to get above the minimum for a full-time course, which is about £4,000 per year, to a maximum for a full-time course, which is about £9,000 per year, you need to provide evidence of your household income. And the maintenance loan is essentially exactly that. It's for you to use, to maintain you and for your living costs while you're studying. So, it's paid into whatever bank account you provide, and a lot of people use it for rent and bills and things like that. But there isn't any kind of strings attached to it. So it is entirely up to you what you use it for. That money is paid into your bank account 3 times a year. You'll get the first one in September, the first one in January, the second one in January, and the third one around about May time. It's up to you what you use it for, entirely your decision. But that's why we also speak a little bit about budgeting as well, because, you'll probably know that there's not many other times in your life that you're going to get paid 3 times a year. So it's just making sure that you know what you're going to get and how it's making sure it's going to last you until the next loan. Now we're going to start talking about the repayments next, and a lot of information about that. And I think it's really, really important because this is often a part of student finance that people get wrong, and people get quite worried about as well. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about this part of your student finance, and there's a lot of talk about people being saddled with unmanageable debt. And I don't think that's the case. It's really important to have the facts, because the way a student loan works is very different to any other loan that you're going to take out in the private sector. So when we see all the words on this PowerPoint screen now, like loan, repayment, interest, debt, credit files, I don't know about you guys, but I automatically think about a private sector bank loan. So if you were walking into a bank or a building society and getting a loan from them, all the kind of the conditions that will come with borrowing from a bank or a building society, what happens if you don't pay it back, what type of repayments are you expected to do or to meet. Well, I want you to put that to one side for a minute, because the student finance loan, the loan from Student Finance England works completely different to any other loan you're going to take out in the private sector. And the first thing that makes it so different is the fact that, yes, it is repayable with interest, but only when you earn over a set threshold when you finish your degree. And that set threshold is currently frozen for 2022 at £27,295. So if you earn less than that amount when you finish your studies, you won't pay anything back on your student loan, and you'll only start paying it back when you earn above that amount. And what you earn, what you pay on the amount on the earnings above that is 9%. So 9% on earnings above the threshold of £27,295. So to put that into context, if you were to earn £1,000 over that threshold, so roughly about £28,300 a year, you would pay about £90 a year back on your student loan, spread over 12 months. So you can see it's very, very different straight away to any other loan you're probably going to take out. And the next thing is, after 30 years, it's completely wiped. So any remaining debt is wiped. And also it doesn't pass on to family members should something happen to you, and it doesn't go onto your credit files. So as you can see, we're building up a real picture of it being a very different type of loan. In fact, to be honest with you, the word loan is a real red herring when we're talking about this, because it's not a loan. It's a loan in name, but essentially it works just like a tax. It's a graduate contribution or tax, if you will, for going to university, and it works in exactly the same way as as tax does. Now, no government is going to want to call it a tax because it's incredibly unpopular and it's going to cause negative headlines for them and things like that. But essentially, that's what it is. Paul, I don't know if there's anything you want to add with regards to that.
Oh, listen, I could rant and rave about this one for the rest of the remaining session. It's crazy because it deliberately confuses people. I think you're absolutely right. The reason that they're using the word loan, debt, interest, all of that terminology is that the government doesn't like using the word tax. But this is a tax in exactly the same way as my income tax or my national insurance. And I'm not... When I go to bed at night, I'm not lying awake panicked about how much national insurance I'm going to be paying for the rest of my working life. It doesn't keep me awake at night. If you asked me now how much, I can roughly kind of tell you how much tax I pay, I think. But if you asked me how much national insurance or tax I've paid in the last 12 months, I think I'd struggle to tell you. And I think, honestly, if people were asking themselves that question who work and pay tax and national insurance, I think you would struggle to tell me how much tax and national insurance you've paid in the last 12 months. Why is that? When the government are taking hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of pounds directly from our wages when we work, why are we not interested about it? Why don't we? I mean, I wish I wasn't paying as much tax and national insurance, but I make some general assumptions. If I haven't got a job, I don't pay tax and national insurance. Makes sense. If I have a job, I only start paying tax and national insurance on the first, what is it now, 12 grand or something like that. The more that I earn, the more tax and national insurance I'm going to pay. It's just like this sliding scale. I don't have to go into a bank or anything to pay it. It just comes off my pay slip, tax, national insurance. If I lose my job, I stop paying tax and national insurance. And I'll probably be paying, well, no, not probably, I'll be paying tax and national insurance for the rest of my working life. That's just how tax and national insurance works. So it just makes real sense to me. Now, sometimes I'll look at my pay slip and I'll go, oh my God, they've taken a little bit too much tax this month. I'm not completely oblivious to it. I am keeping an eye on it. But generally speaking, it just takes care of itself. I'm not sat panicked about it. And student finance is exactly the same. It's just an additional line on your pay slip. So I haven't been to university, so I don't pay that tax. You're going to university, so you're going to pay that tax once you leave. If you haven't got a job, you won't pay that tax. You'll only start paying it after you earn a certain amount. They take it off your pay slip. The more you earn, more you pay back. You stop getting a job, you stop paying that tax. And you'll probably be paying it for the rest of your working life. I mean, if you've got a job in the hundreds of thousands of pounds, we can have a conversation, I think, about whether students should even be paying a tax, whether university education should be free, whether there should be any kind of payments at all. But more people voted for a Conservative government than they did a Labour one. So that conversation's dead in the water, really. Students have to pay to go to university. But rather than feeling daunted and overwhelmed by this, oh my God, £9,000 tuition fee, all of this debt. You read the headline, students straddled with 50, 60,000, 18-year-olds straddled with 50, 60,000 pounds of debt by the time they leave university. No one talks about income tax in that way. Why are we doing it about this student tax? It really bugs me. Yeah, I'm going to stop. I'm going to cool down about it because it isn't it. But the problem is that it stops people from coming to university and thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to do that. Because what also happens is their supporters quite often, and particularly with mature students, you find that maybe their partners or the supporters themselves maybe haven't been to university. So they'll often say, oh, going to university, what you doing that for? All of that debt. It plants these kind of seeds of like, you shouldn't be doing it because of this debt. And it's crazy. So it is a barrier, and it's why I get so passionate. Right, I'm going to stop talking.
No, I think you summed it up, really well, Paul. It's that thing, isn't it? We really don't really feel strongly that people shouldn't be put off by the fear of unmanageable debt. with going to university, because it's not about the amount you're borrowing or taking out. It's about that repayment threshold and when you start paying it back. That's where the focus should really be. And often it's not. It's on the numbers. And this is irrespective of how much you're borrowing as well. So, if you borrow the full amount that you're entitled to, you would still only start to pay it back when you earn over this set threshold, irrespective of how much you take out from Student Finance England. So yeah, that's why we kind of like really try and, hammer the point home, I guess. But, we'd also kind of say that if you do have any extra time, and I'm sure Paul will put a link to it in the chat, and anybody watching the recording, it's really easy to find. But Martin Lewis, if any of you know him, he comes on ITV, talks about money, and he's also got the Money Saving Expert website, which we've already spoke about once today with regards to heating. Yeah, he's done some really interesting work around this, and he's wrote a nice article about student finance myth busting. So essentially looking at these myths that, and things that people think around student finance, and actually looking at the reality of it. And, this is one of the kind of things that he really looks at. And it's a nice article to have a read yourself with a cup of tea, or to send on, to a friend or family member, let them have a read of it. Maybe it's somebody on the fence about thinking about going to university themselves. He really sums it up in a very succinct way. So do have a look at that if you get the opportunity. So the next thing, I guess, to continue how you're going to pay for it is additional support that you can get from Student Finance England. Now, these are grants, and we're going to talk in the next few slides about grants and bursaries. And essentially what I'm referring to when I'm saying a grant or a bursary is a pot of money that you can get access to that you don't have to pay back. So nobody's expecting you to pay this money back. It's money that's given to you, support that's provided, and you're not expected to pay it back in any way. So there's additional financial support from Student Finance England, from the government, for disability support and support for dependents. So disability support, it's not means tested and it's not repayable. So as long as you're eligible for it, you'll get the full amount and you're not expected to pay it back. And it's support for any study costs which are linked to the programme that you're going to be studying on. And these will be paid directly to whoever's providing that support. And disability, in terms of Student Finance England, it can mean a wide range of different conditions. So it could be anything from a long-term health condition, a mental health condition, it could be an unseen condition or a learning difference, for example, like dyslexia, dyspraxia. And any support that would need to be put in place for your studies, which would have a financial cost, could be covered by this. So, for example, that could be, obviously it could be very, very different depending on, each individual. But to give you some kind of idea, if it's somebody with dyslexia, it could be support maybe for note taking. It could be some kind of technology which will help with that, or a laptop. For somebody with mobility issues, perhaps it's getting to and from university that could be supported there. And as I said, it's paid to whoever's providing that support. So if you think that's relevant to you, or you think that's applicable, definitely apply for it and get your application in. Or actually, you don't need to get a separate application. It's part of your student finance application. It will ask you if you need any additional support. If you have a disability, would need any additional support during your studies. If you say yes, it'll take you through to another part of the form. Exactly the same with the support for dependents as well. So there's additional support for people with dependents, children or adults, and this is means tested. So it is, your household income is taken into consideration to decide if you're eligible for it, and if you are, how much you can get. And again, if you are eligible for it, it's not repayable. You don't have to pay it back. Now, just to mention as well, before I start talking about the support for dependents, support for dependents is for full-time students only. So it's not available to part-time students, unfortunately. Everything else we spoke about is applicable and available to part-time students. So disability support, your tuition fee loan, your maintenance loan. But if you are going to be a part-time student on a part-time course, unfortunately, you don't get access to the support for dependents. But for full-time students, just to give you an idea and a flavour of some, what you could get access to, for parents, there's the Parents Learning Allowance, which is a one-off payment per year, and it could be a maximum of £1,821 a year. That's not per child, that's one or more children, and that's a maximum. So depending on your circumstances, if you are eligible for it, it could be an amount up to that. And the second one is a childcare grant as well. So, you know, we spoke about where if you're going to be in uni and usually be looking after your kids and now you're going to put them in nursery, well, the childcare grant is something that potentially could be used to pay for that nursery or creche. And it's for up to 85% of childcare costs. And it's paid directly to whoever's providing that care, essentially. So if it's a nursery, it'd be paid directly to them. And just a few things to know about the childcare grant. Firstly, it's got to be Ofsted registered. So if grandparents are going to be looking after the kids, you know, while you're studying, unfortunately that couldn't be used to claim for that. And also, if you are in receipt of child tax credits, you can't also claim the childcare grant. So it's a kind of a bit of a decision to weigh up which one will be best for you, really. Paul, I don't know if there's anything you want to add there, or if we covered it.
I mean, just reinforcing, I suppose, a couple of the key messages there, and it was asked in the chat. So yeah, just people clarifying. Well, the parents' learning allowance and the dependents grants, part-time students can't get them. No, part-time student tuition fee loan, maintenance loan, disability support. We'll talk about maybe some other pots of money on the next slide. But that additional support for dependents, no, you wouldn't be eligible. The question in the chat there as well around, can I claim child tax credits as a full-time student? I'm going to tread really carefully here, because what we're not here is benefits advisors. And I'm very aware that with benefits, different people will have different entitlements. My understanding, though, is that, well, not my understanding, we have a lot of students that are in receipt of working tax credits, and particularly the childcare element of working tax credits, either themselves or with the partner. And just reinforcing there, it's an either or. So a student can keep the childcare element of the working tax credits, or get the childcare grant. And there's a bit of weighing up. I mean, if you've got kids who are 14 and let themselves in the house, or family members that provide regular childcare, you might be better off keeping your child tax credits. Equally, if you've got a child in nursery 5 days a week, there'll be a bit of balancing and a bit of budgeting. We'll provide a link to a student finance calculator, and you might want to apply for the childcare grant to get an idea of how much you might get. A little bit of working there, but yeah, I'll not give benefits advice, but yeah, you can still claim child tax credits and child benefits.
Yeah, and I wonder, Paul, if it's worth mentioning about the actual the amount as well, with regards to it being a bit different to the maintenance side as well.
One of the things that does particularly sting parents occasionally is they make an assumption. We'll talk a little bit later on in this session about how much you might get depending on your household income, and how that's assessed. We'll talk about that. Your maintenance loan that you get depends on household income, as does the childcare grant. But people assume, I think, that the two levels are the same. So they think, all right, well, I'm eligible for the full maintenance loan because of my household income, so I'll definitely be eligible for the full childcare grant. Oh, and that's not the same case. The thresholds that they use are different. Just because you're eligible for the full maintenance loan doesn't mean that you're eligible for the full childcare grant. And this is another reason why we always say apply early for your finance. Apply early because you want to make sure that when September comes, you've got enough money in the bank. But actually, if you apply early, you know what you're going to get, and you can budget accordingly. So particularly around things like childcare and stuff like that, it is worth just applying early.
Yeah, totally agree. You know, student finance aren't particularly fast as well. You know, when they're processing your application, if they need anything additional from you, it can take them quite a while. So get everything in early can just help you plan in advance, and you know, it just helps take the pressure off, doesn't it? When you're actually sorting things out for university, you know what you're going to get, you know what you're entitled to, and then you can make plans accordingly. But yeah, any questions about that, keep them coming in the chat. I'm sure Paul will be happy to answer them. But if something crops up later on and you have any questions, feel free to ask as well. We're always available for any questions. So the next thing is additional financial support that you can get. Sorry, I'm I can't seem to get my words out today. That you can get from different avenues. So again, we're talking about grants and bursaries, money that you don't have to pay back. And one question Paul and I do this session with a lot of different groups, some at college, for example, some adults studying in college on a variety of different courses. And one thing, when we're in the classroom, that we always ask is, have you been in contact with any universities that you're interested in applying for, to find out if there's any pots of money that you can get access to that you don't have to pay back, any extra support that you can get. And often, there'll be a bit of a silence, and people, through no fault of their own, don't realize that there's additional money that you can get, which can in some cases be a few £1,000s per year on top of your maintenance loan, on top of any money you can get, from that we spoke about in the previous slides, that can make a real difference. And it's going to depend on the course you're going to go and do, and crucially, the university you're looking at. So I would say, irrespective of where you're thinking of studying, if it's Leeds, if you're thinking about Leeds, Beckett, Manchester, Bradford, you're thinking about maybe 5 universities, find out if there's any additional support that you can get access to. And now often universities will have this support, and they can have a real range of reasons for having it. It could be based on your own personal circumstances with regards to where you live. It could be based on whether you're the first person to go to university in your family. It could be, for a number of different reasons. But do have a look at it. Do see what you can find out. We're going to keep talking about research here, but the research can really pay off. So, for example, and just to give you an example from Leeds University has what's called the Leeds Bursary, and it could be up to £3,000 a year on top of any money that you can get elsewhere that you don't have to pay back. And obviously, £3,000 a year is a lot of money, and it can make a big difference. We spoke about there not being a named travel bursary or travel grant. Well, there's no reason, if you need, if you really wanted to use it for something like that, that you couldn't use this, And it could be the difference between deciding which university you go to as well. For some people, that extra financial support that they can get could pay for your petrol, could pay for, rent if you're going to be moving, or it could allow you maybe to work less hours in a job as well. I can tell you what Leeds does, but I can't, unfortunately, tell you what all the other 200 odd universities in the UK offer. So that's why we say research. Find out what they've got available, find out what the eligibility criteria could be and is, should I say, and then find out about how you apply for it. Some universities like Leeds, they'll automatically enroll you for the Leeds bursary if you're applying for student finance. But not every uni will. Some will ask you to fill out an application, online perhaps, and send it in to them. And often the deadlines can be relatively early. They could be in the springtime, so don't miss out on them. And you know what? If there's 5 different universities that you're thinking of applying for, and there's 5 different, grants that they're offering, or bursaries, 5 different universities, apply for them all. And then you'll only get the one if you get it from the university you end up going to. And this is for full-time and part-time students as well. So, just to mention, at Leeds, for example, the Leeds bursary is available to full-time students and then also part-time students. And there's a scale on what you'd be able to get eligibility for on our website. And I'm sure Paul or Greg will put a link to that as well. But do your research and see what's available, see what you can find out. Because the worst thing to do would be to turn up in September and say, right, what additional financial support have you got for me? And somebody says, well, you could have applied for this bursary, but unfortunately the deadline was in June or something like that, and now it's closed. Apply for these things, or find out about them now, and see what you need to put in place, because it could pay off. By September you could be having quite an extra sum of money on top of your loan from the government as well. And there's additional support that you might be able to get elsewhere away from universities and Student Finance England. There's often organisations, trusts, funds who put up amounts of money, usually in the hundreds, couple of hundred, three, four, maybe £500, one-off payments that you could get for a number of reasons. Again, eligibility criteria is incredibly varied on this. And there's a website called the Scholarship Hub, which you don't have to pay to sign up for. They've got a free service, and you can have a search by university, area or course, and you can get updates via email as well. And the eligibility criteria can be based, again, it could be first and foremost to go to uni. It could be based on whether you've worked in a particular sector. I've seen one for retail workers where it's £500 to go to university. It could be to get people to work in a particular sector. But I've also seen them for vegetarian students from the Vegetarian Society, £500 that they'll offer you if you're a vegetarian student. Now, not for everybody to maybe not everybody's got the time to research and look for these things, but if you could find an extra few £100s, that could pay for a laptop, or towards a laptop perhaps if you need that for your studies, or it could pay for a number of things, books and things like that. So it's worth doing the legwork now, and it can really pay off in September. Paul, is there anything that I've missed out there? Probably is.
I tell you what, I was knee deep in the chat there. Some really good questions coming in thick and fast. Where we were at the grants and bursaries again, I'll just reinforce the message. There might be free money at the university. Mm-hmm. It's your job to just do a little bit of research at the universities that you want to apply for. Send them an email if you can't find the information. It's a significant amount of money, and as John probably said, there can be the difference between you maybe choosing one university over the other, being able to afford the parking. That train trip to Huddersfield might then be achievable and means you can go to your first choice university. I'd much rather that money was in your bank account than ours. Frankly, it can really make a difference. So yeah, do your research though.
Yeah, definitely. That's the key word, research, because unfortunately, as I said, Paul and I can't tell you exactly what each university is going to be able to offer you. I can't tell you what Bradford's got, can't tell you what Huddersfield's got, or the other few hundred universities across the country. But you can find it out really often quite easily by Googling, by looking on their websites. Start with a fees and funding page. There's a wealth of information that you can often find there. And you know what? If you can't find anything out, give them a call or send them an email and just say, is there any additional financial support that I might be eligible for? There's also often scholarships as well. So look into all these things, but do it early and see what you can find out. So additional support that we'll look at, and this is for any student studying what's called, Paul mentioned it earlier, should I say, a allied healthcare degree. And it's essentially the government a few years ago popped up and said they were going to give £5,000 a year to nurses who were studying degrees or studying nursing degrees, should I say. And then actually, it miraculously actually materialised, and it's took the form of a training grant. And it's not just nurses that are eligible for this. It's a number of different courses, allied healthcare courses, and that includes nursing and all the different nursing courses, including adult nursing, mental health nursing, child nursing, but also courses such as occupational therapy, physiotherapy, paramedic sciences, well, what else? I think possibly dietetics as well, but a number of different courses, podiatry, and they're all listed on the Learn Support Fund's website, which we'll have a look at. I'll show you the link in a minute. But essentially, you get a training grant if you study one of those courses. It's not repayable, so you don't have to pay it back. It's a grant, and it's not means tested. So as long as you are studying the course, I think maybe, and have made an application for student finance, you'll be able to get the £5,000 per year. And that over 3 years is an extra 15 grand that you could get access to if you study those courses. And again, it's up to you what you use that money for. But on top of that, there's a parental support that you can get, which is, again, you don't have to pay it back. It's not means tested, and it's additional £2,000, so on top of the £5,000 a year for students with at least one dependent child under 15 or 17 if registered with special educational needs. And again, that's per year. And that's on top of anything, all this is on top of anything else that you can get. So if you were eligible for the parental learning allowance, that £1,800, and you were also studying a healthcare course, that's applicable or eligible for the training grant, you'd also get this additional £2,000 a year. And there's also support for travel and accommodation expenses as well. So if you're having to stay over somewhere during your placements, or if you're having to travel quite a distance further than you normally would, you might be able to get your excess costs reimbursed essentially. So lots of extra support here for healthcare courses which are eligible. And as I said, this link here is the best place to have a look. Hopefully we'll be able to put it in the chat. Honestly, their website is the best place to start. So it's administered by the NHS, by the Learning Support Fund, and it's not administered by Student Finance England, which means that you have to apply separately for it. So don't think that just because you're applying for student finance, you'll also be put into, kind of rolled over for this as well. You have to apply separately for it, as it's administered by the NHS. But their website has got information about how to apply. It's got a list of all the courses which are eligible. It's got lots more information about additional pots of money that you might be able to get as well. I think there's more money, if you're doing a course that they really need professionals working in that sector, a course that leads on to that particular profession, or, if you're doing a particular degree in a particular area of the country where they really need professional, healthcare workers in that area of the country. So there could be extra money as well on top of what we just spoke about. Have a look at their website. Remember, you've got to apply separately. It's probably going to open, or it will open in summer. So probably around about June, July time. Check their website for updates. Hopefully, if you are applying for a healthcare course, the university that you're applying to will let you know, but don't rely on that. Put a note in, your calendar on your phone, or if you've got a paper calendar like me, write it in there, apply for learning support, or as well, follow their Facebook or Twitter, they'll give you updates on there as well. And I think, that's a good place to ask any questions if you're having issues with the application. But, we find that, students who are applying and who are studying healthcare courses which are eligible for this, if they're getting the top end of their loan, from Student Finance England, and they're eligible for extra support from the university, from bursaries, and then also the Learning Support Fund, they can find that actually they've got quite a good chunk of money per year for their studies, a lot more than would have previously been available as well. Paul, have I missed anything from the Learning Support Fund, do you think, or shall we move on?
No, I don't think so. There was a little bit of confusion there, maybe in the chat, that is this instead of? No, it's in addition to.
Yeah.
So everyone is entitled for the tuition fee loan, maintenance loan, all of that, your Student Finance England stuff. People doing those NHS courses can apply separately to this NHS Learning Support Fund. It's on top of.
Yeah, on top of. So, if you get, let's say you get the top end of your maintenance loan, then you add this £5,000 on top of that, and anything else you can get. And as I said, the Learning Support Fund, the support you get is non-repayable. You are not expected to pay this back. So it's a bursary grant. So hopefully you sounds like you've got Paul answering lots of questions in the chat, which is brilliant, but keep asking them. And I guess the next thing is a bit more of the nuts and bolts around, how long can you get funding for, information on that. And then also we'll look at eligibility, and also, your household income and what is used to make a decision on how much you can get in your maintenance loan. But to start off with, there's two questions here, which I'm sure Paul gets asked quite a lot. How long can I get funding for? And, how much will I get? How much, am I eligible for? So the first thing is how long can you get funding for? Now, this is the normal duration of your course plus a gift year for false starts and repeat years. And I honestly meet people who, work at university and have worked in universities for a while, and they think the normal duration of a course is 3 years for a full-time course. And actually, the normal duration can include a foundation year, it could include a work placement year, it could include a year abroad, or even an integrated master's. It could include some of these or even all of them. So you can see how 3 years can then stretch to 4 years, 5 years, even longer, that will still be classed by Student Finance England as the normal duration of your studies. And as a result of that, you would still get funding for the duration of that per year. So do not think that if you're looking at a foundation year, you're thinking about doing a study abroad, or you're doing a course, you want to do a course that has a master's, integrated master's, you go straight onto a master's degree at the end of it, that you'd in any way negatively impact your eligibility for student finance. You wouldn't at all. You would still get funding for the duration of that course. And you also receive a gift year as well. So the gift year is essentially an additional year that student finance provide if things don't go to plan. So if there's a false start, or if you maybe have to repeat a year, for example, student finance have this ring fence year which they keep for you in, if that happens, so you can carry on with your studies essentially. The only time this gets a bit more complicated is if you've previously been to the university before. If anybody's previously been to university before, generally speaking, full time, any previous study will be deducted from the amount of, any years of previous study would be deducted from how long you could get funding for, with the exception of anybody who's looking at doing an allied healthcare course. So one of the courses which is listed on the Learning Support Fund's website is eligible for the training grant. You can get full funding for a second degree for those programs. Any questions around that, please feel free to ask us. And the next thing is about how much you're going to get as well. And it's obvious, it's a legitimate question that everybody's going to have, because it helps you kind of plan, what you're going to get and how you're going to use it. Everybody's going to be different, is the honest truth, and everybody listening to this session, it would be in receipt of a different amount, because everybody's going to be eligible for different amounts from the maintenance loan, but then also there's all the extra pots of money that you could get access to. So there's no one size fits all model which Paul and I can just say, you get this, you get that. Best thing to do is to apply as soon as it opens for student finance. So remember, March kind of time for full-time. Part-time, we're talking around about June, July time. And if you want to know now, if you want an indication of what you might get, have a look at the Student Finance Calculator. Just type in Student Finance England Calculator into Google, and it'll come up straight away. And that'll give you a bit of a rough idea of what you might get depending on your circumstances. So the next thing is eligibility for finance. And in the next couple of slides, we'll go over quite a bit of information about A, who is eligible for student finance, and then B, if you are eligible, what's taken into consideration to decide how much you can get in your maintenance loan, your living cost loan. So any questions at all about this, please feel free to ask us, because there'll be quite a lot of information to take in over these next two slides. And secondly, this, particularly for the immigration status, is not a kind of, an exhaustive list. There is extra things which could be taken into consideration around the immigration status, particularly around EU status, pre-settled and settled status, and also refugee status. So if any of those are applicable to you, please feel free to ask us. But generally speaking, you can apply for student finance as long as you meet the following 3 criteria. The first one is immigration status, the second one is residency, and the third one is previous study. So for immigration status, if you're a UK national holder, so UK passport, I always say that wrong. I always say UK national holder. I do it every time. If you're a UK national or a UK passport holder, or you have indefinite leave to remain, then that would tick that box. As I said, there's additional statuses which can be used, but if you're unsure about any of that, do ask us. The next thing is residency. So as well as meeting the immigration status, you also have to have been living in the UK for 3 years immediately before starting your course, and they're very strict on this as well. So it can't be 2 years and 11 months, it has to be 3 years. And if you were starting a course this year, that would be up to the 1st of September 2022. So 3 years up to the 1st of September 2022. Obviously, if it's subsequent years that you're thinking of applying, it will be to September of that year. And also, as I mentioned, any previous university study is deducted, generally speaking, from how long you can get funding for. So if you meet that criteria on this slide here, then you would get eligibility, or you'll be able to get access to your tuition fee loan for the duration of your studies. And you'd also be eligible for a full-time course, and full-time figures I'm speaking about, for a minimum maintenance loan of about £4,500 per year. But for a full-time maximum, which is about £9,500 per year, you need to provide evidence of your household income. For a part-time course, to get the maintenance loan for a course which is eligible, you'd also need to provide evidence of your household income as well. So the household income, and what counts as the household income, is essentially decided by your age. That is the key factor that Student Finance England are interested in when they're making a decision as who is classed as your household. So if you are under 25, it's your parents' income which is classed as your household, irrespective of whether you live with them or not. And if you're over 25, it is a partner, spouse, or civil partner's income who you live with, which is taken into consideration to decide how much you can get in your maintenance loan. So I guess a couple of things to mention first off. So firstly, your income is always nil for the purposes of student finance. So if you are working a part-time or full-time job now, and you will be when you're applying for student finance, or if if you're going to be continuing to work while you're studying, that income is not taken into consideration to decide how much you can get in your maintenance loan. It won't be factored in. Your income will always be nil. And secondly, if you're over 25, for example, and you don't have a partner, then there wouldn't be anything to class as your household. So you'd be looking at the top end for your maintenance loan. Just to say as well that there are some exceptions, not too many, but there are some exceptions if you are under 25, where your parents' income won't be taken into consideration. And in that instance, you'll go into the over 25 category, where it'd be a partner, spouse, civil partner's income who you live with, whose income would be taken into consideration to decide your household and how much you get in your maintenance loan. And those considerations are, if you're under 25 and you're married or divorced or have children of your own, if you've been financially independent from your parents for 36 months, 3 years, and you can prove it, or if you have been estranged from your parents, and again, you'd need to be able to prove that. They're the only circumstances they'll take into consideration to not use your parents' income to decide how much you can get in your maintenance loan. So quite a lot to take in there. Quite a lot to take in. Paul, I don't know if there's anything you want to add before I carry on with that. If there's
just
anything
to say, people overcomplicate that in their own minds. Yeah. I get a lot of questions with, well, what about this? I live with my cousin, but my sister lives with me, but she's got her daughter in as well. And actually, I've got like my granddad, and what I'm looking at, They completely It is literally just that. If you're under the age of 25, it's your parents' income, whether you live with them or not. If you're over the age of 25, it's your partner, spouse, civil partner, that other person. So, I mean, feel free between now and September to just say, oh, Paul and John said we're getting a divorce because I'm going to be better off, and you need to leave now. But I think those important things, it feels like an injustice when you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, well, I'm 23 and I haven't lived with my parents for X amount. There is those exceptions, child of your own. If you've been married or divorced, you can prove that you've been financially independent. That it's easiest done with P60s. Some people then have to cobble like 36 months worth of pay slips or benefits stuff, and or if you've been estranged from your parents. So, but it is just that. It isn't any more complex than that.
Yeah, and I mean this, I guess as well. This is why it's good to apply early as well, because if you do want to provide evidence of 36 months worth of pay slips and things like that, obviously it can take time to put those together, and it can take time for them to get through to student finance when you send them. So the earlier you do that, the better, and the more likely you're going to have an outcome sorted out for September for when you start your course. And just to mention as well, as Paul said, when we're talking about evidence, maybe have a conversation with whoever's going to be, classed as your household. so they're aware, in case they need to provide evidence of that. So we're talking about P60s would be the easiest to provide, or something like weekly, monthly, bi-monthly pay slips. And it would be for the previous tax year as well, which I think is 2020, 21, I believe. Or I'm sure Paul will tell me if that's not right. So that's what they need to provide evidence of from the previous tax year. Just to mention as well, obviously, we've lived through the last couple of years, and it's not been, well, it's been very different, hasn't it, with COVID and everything like that, and furlough and things like that. So if the income now, the household income now, or whatever's being used as the household income, whether that be a parent or partner's income, is has dropped significantly between now and the previous tax year, then you can actually speak to student finance and actually ask them to reassess it based on this year's income. So if it's dropped by more than 15%, you can have that conversation with student finance. Just to say as well, because again, this is something that people don't realise, you have to do this every year. This isn't a one-stop shop, a one and done. You apply to student finance, that's what they're going to give you. You need to do this every year, to provide that evidence of the household income. So be aware that this is something that you have to do every year of your studies. And also, if anybody is going to be over 59, so 60 and above when they're studying, you will get access to a capped maintenance loan only. And the capped maintenance loan for full time, I think, is something about £4,500 per year. That's the maximum that you can get. So just bear that in mind as well if you're going to be 60 and above when you're studying. So key things just to go over again, just to kind of, I guess, run through and just to add a couple of extra things that we haven't mentioned already. But the key things to consider are, well, the fees, but then bear in mind that as long as you're eligible, you'll get your tuition fee loan to cover that for the duration of your studies, and you're not expected to have the cash up front to pay for that. There's lots of bursaries and grants available for a wide variety of different reasons. Look into them, see what you can find out, see what you can get access to. Do that research, because researching now and doing a bit of reading now and checking on websites could pay off in thousands when you start university. It could make that much of a difference. If anybody's thinking about going to uni in London, then you're going to get a bit more in your living cost loan, your maintenance loan, than if you are studying outside of London. I guess it's just to help with that London living rates, because obviously it's pretty expensive to live in London for a lot of people. So it's just to help with that. I think it's maybe an extra £1,500 a year, but don't quote me on that. And also, if you live at home in the parental home while you're studying, you'll get a little bit less in your maintenance loan than you will if you're not. So key things, again, if you've got dependents, there's additional support from the parental learning allowance and the childcare grant. There also additional support if you have a disability for study costs. And we mentioned about the additional avenues as well from universities, and then also things like the Learning Support Fund as well. We spoke in detail about your household and who's classed as your household. So apply as soon as student finance opens for applications. Get that application in. As I say, it'll be around about March time. We'll be send out regular newsletter. So if you're somebody who gets that, then we'll make sure to let you know when full-time applications open. But just keep your eye on it as well. And if you want a bit of a estimation beforehand, check out the student finance calculator. But hopefully that has helped. But I mean, if the conversation, as I mentioned, doesn't have to stop here. And there's a lot of additional support that you can get access to at the Lifelong Learning Centre. So for any adults who haven't had the opportunity to go to university before and don't hold a degree that's recognised in the UK, you can also access our guidance service. So the brilliant Mohammed and Denise, who are incredibly knowledgeable about support for adults, about qualification queries, about student finance as well, about applications. They can provide they can have conversations with you, either coming into the office at the Lifelong Learning Centre or over the telephone. It's 45 minutes or so to talk about your situations and what you want to study. And it doesn't matter if you're thinking about going to university this year, you're not sure if you even want to go, or if you do in a few years' time, you're still really, really welcome to access that support. So if that would be relevant to you, please do feel free to access it, and we'll send you a link in our follow-up email of how you can access it.